Ladies and gentlemen, now we are moving ahead with the first panel of the day. The thematic topic of the discussion today is how regional marketing is being utilized to maximize the reach. Uh, the using real-time data to understand how marketing segments react to external factors. We have eminent panel speakers for the day. To introduce, we have Mr. Sudhanshu Vermaji. He's the CEO of Bennett University. So we welcome you in today's session. We have Mr. Meghdut Roy Chaudhary, the Director of Global Operations, Techno India University. Welcome, Mr. Meghdut, in today's session.
Thank you very much. Happy
Mr.
to be
Suraj
here.
Bhoyar, Mr. Suraj Bhoyar, Project Director and Digital Evangelist, MIT Center of Future Skills Excellence, MIT ADT University from Pune. Welcome, Mr. Suraj, in today's session.
Thank you. Thank you.
We have Mr. Manjinder Singh Dhadiwal. He is VP Student Outreach from Chitkara University. Welcome, Manjinder sir, in today's event.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much.
Mr. Jayanta Bagchi. He is Associate Vice President, Branding and Communication, NSHM Knowledge Campus. Welcome, Mr. Jayanta sir. And this session will be moderated by Mr. Tarunjit Singh. He's the Zonal Head, West Region, College Dunia. He's the moderator of the session. So without wasting much time, may I please offer the virtual mic to Mr. Tarunjit Singh to please lead the session for the day. Welcome, everybody. Tarunjit Singh,
my video has been stopped by the host. If you can please.
Oh, we are just checking.
Yes. Hi.
Yeah.
Good afternoon. Yeah. Hi. A very warm welcome to the eminent panelist, and thanks for the lovely introduction, sir. So this topic that we have in hand, that how. Give me a moment, please. Just. Yeah. So how regional marketing basically can maximize the reach using a real-time data and to understand how market segments basically react to external factors. There's a lot of layers in the topic itself, and it'll be really interesting discussion. I hope, and as we discuss through the discussion, we might be uncovering a lot of layers in this topic itself. So without a further ado, let me just reach out to the panelists and just to have the opening remarks for them, as in what do they think regarding the real-time data and how real-time data basically helps in decision making, and specifically to the education sector, which kind of seldom uses data and more depends on the perception or the gut feeling altogether. So without further ado, let me just open the mic and let's start with Dr. Manjinder Singh Dhaliwal. Sir, can we have your opening remarks on the topic at hand, please?
Thank you, Karanji. Thank you very much. I'm Dr. Manjinder Singh. I am working with the Chitkara University. I take care of strategy and business development here. So when we talk of regional, am I audible?
Yeah.
So when we talk of universities in India, most of the universities are based in segments. I mean, largely intake in all of Indian universities is regional. So there are, when we talk national participation of a student base in terms of admission, that level has not yet reached, barring the government universities and the government institutions. So when we talk of real-time data, it always focuses onto the regional segmentation of market. All universities, 70% of their intake is coming from the state they belong to or the neighboring states. So when we correlate this to the online marketing and digital sphere of it, we look at it that the larger part of effort taken by all digital platforms is the segmentation and fragmentation of the data and then sending it across to the platforms. So that's a opening remark. We can proceed to the.
Right, Mr. Bagchi, can we have your opening remarks, sir?
Hi, good afternoon, and my regards to all the panelists. I'm very fortunate to be a part of this great initiative. And Taranjot, uh, I mean, my warm welcome to you to moderate this program. You see, I mean, basically, digital marketing and marketing automation, if we take, that has made marketing a very data centric, very process driven. Hmm. And now the major benefit which the marketeers have is they can customize their campaigns with regard to the regions in terms of courses, in terms of the target students they want to reach. So much customization we could not ever think of initially. And this is the major benefit which has come across. And as we all know, that efficacy of marketing and especially digital marketing will primarily depend upon how specifically we target. And that is where the importance of the data and especially how we use it comes into. I mean, that would be my opening remarks.
Great. Let's move on to Mr. Suraj Bhoyar. Sir, can we have your opening comments, please?
Yeah, thank you, Tanjo. Thank you so much, all the panelists. Thank you so much for having me here. I basically, being technologist, I will go with the technology. And everyone knows that technology has replaced everything, right from grocery to even this is the time where teachers, education facilitator has used the technology to this extent, first time. And the education landscape, it can't be an exception for this. And as far as higher education landscape in India is concerned, they have to emerge out of it, and they have started embracing it. So that's how digital marketing, social medias, everyone is. And even if you could recall the figures, the OTT platforms, the use of OTT platform has been surged up. Even nowadays, everyone uses mobile a lot. So again, it was earlier also said from e-commerce to m-commerce, but as far as our admission and other context is concerned, you can think of mobile as a main, what we can say, connecting medium to land with your or to communicate with your prospects. And using this technology, let me tell you about CRM, or you can even talk about the AI powered chatbots, because those are the what we can say communicator on behalf of us being university with the prospects. So that's how I'm also looking forward to have great interaction with the eminent panelists over here. Over to you, Tanju.
Thanks, Mr. Boyer. We'll move on to one of the veterans of this industry, and one of my personal favorite thought leaders, Mr. Sudhanshu Verma. Sir, can we have your opening remarks, please? Sir, your mic is mute, sir.
Thanks, Taranjot, but honestly, I'm not a veteran compared to all the others on the panel. I think maybe Meghdut will actually have more experience than me in the education sector. But having said that, thanks a lot for making me your favorite. When you talk of the thing saying that what do you do on regional marketing to extend the reach? I think in today's scenario, there is no option but to have regional reach. And as what Jayanta was saying, in today's world driven by technology, there is actually no boundary to a region or to an area. And therefore, what we do today and how we do today is very different than what was being done earlier. And it makes it all the more easier for universities to really expand their footprint, which begins, of course, in the digital world. And then slowly and steadily, the people who've come and become a part of your university or institution typically become your brand ambassadors to only increase the regional footprint on a consistent basis. And therefore, data being key and the tool you used on that data being the second most important after collecting of data is something I think which we don't have a choice, but we have to learn and live and capitalize on. That's all to begin with.
Great. Thanks a lot, Mr. Verma. Mr. Meghdut, can we have your opening comments, please?
Sure thing. Hi, everyone. Happy to be here. I think I'd like to talk about 2 points primarily for my opening remarks. One, obviously, being that technology on one side, all of that is good and great, but technology, let's not forget, at the end of the day, is only as relevant as well as we can use it. So for me, at least personally speaking, the greatest marketing strategy is care. The greatest marketing strategy is empathy. If you understand your audience, they will be coming back to you. Of course, technology makes it a bit easier to run retargeting campaigns, for example, to understand the audience, run analytics. Back in the day, you'd have big billboards, you'd walk past it or you'd drive past it, and there would be no way to understand who the people were who were walking past it. Now you understand what drinks they prefer. Now you understand what kind of restaurants they like going to. And so you can figure out who exactly it is that your customers are, and then you figure out that entire base and you keep marketing to people like that. That's easier now. The second part that I would like to talk about, and maybe we'll come back to that later, is the need for most of social media, most educational institutions and most of academia to stop thinking of the use of technology in linear media. What I mean to say is that just because something works in the physical medium does not necessarily mean that it would work with technology. We've seen that even in the pandemic as a very pertinent example. For example, when we were doing webinars and we were doing seminars and running campaigns at the beginning of the year, everyone was talking about, oh, how great technology is and it's helping us so much. But if you look at it now, the retention rates have dropped massively, even with the same kind of content, even if you're bringing in amazing speakers. And I say that as a promoter of a university, as well as somebody who takes a keen interest in marketing itself. How do you retain people just through technology is becoming a problem. So this is something I'd love to talk about with the rest of the panelists at a later point of time, is the importance of post-content strategy, and maybe even the importance of post-content strategists as part of our marketing teams. How can they help take what we are creating? I mean, you spend 4 months, 5 months, 6 months creating a massive campaign and then you let it go. What happens after that? Are you collecting enough data about it, analyzing it and using it later? Is there somebody on your team who understands philosophy well enough, who understands the social context well enough to be able to create something for the next 5, 6, 10 campaigns that you do? So 2 points from my side. Would love to pick that up with the rest of the audience. Thank you very much.
Great. I think that's quite a remarkable opening statement. Let's uncover the layers now, right? So let's now this has been substantiated that yes, data is important. Data is being used for different aspects of the admission cycles in this sector. Let's try to understand what are the different aspects that can be basically used for the data. So now the big data has actually unleashed torrents of terabytes, what everything, right, from the customer behaviors, weather patterns to the demographic, the consumers. Now we are seeing that the shift in the markets as well. Right now, let's try to understand that how data is basically being used in the outreach aspect, as an outreach of the programs. Right? How are we building outreach programs with taking data into consideration? And specifically, I would love to start this conversation with Dr. Majinder. That how Chitkara University, if personal anecdotes can be shared, that how data is being used to basically build the outreach programs for the students.
Taranjot, I would go back to say 3-4 years we have been doing at Chitkara University as far as the digital marketing sphere is concerned. So what happened is, I mean, I personally find in our Indian context, digital marketing and technology into education segment is in a stage of infancy. So about 4 years back, we experimented with all available platforms in country, be it Google, Facebook, or various portals, all of them. And then what happened, what we found out that all these platforms are trying to do a segregation of data based on to the student interest. And then that is forwarded to the university teams, and the university teams are led to do whatever they want to do, whether the student counseling or outreach or maybe sales directly or trying to retain them for the coming years, etc., etc., etc. So, as Sudhanshu said, there are no boundaries today to market universities globally or locally, but we have to focus regionally in terms of getting our uh, vacancy filled or making our merit better, because at the start of it, all universities in India are regional based in terms of their larger part of intake.
Mhm.
What we found out, our research, I mean, it gave us two things. One is there is a need for innovation in digital marketing in India. That's the one thing. Parallelly, I found out that there is a limiting factor to marketing in education sphere. And that limiting factor is the total number of students passing out in a year is constant. We are not like pharmacy companies, we are not like insurance companies where the entire country is our market and there is no limiting factor as far as the number of available prospective clients are concerned. So this is one side of it. We have a limiting factor that the total number of students, the total number of data is like fixed, and then we divide it into two parts. One is the technology side of it, wherein we generate a various kind of filters, do email marketing, send them messages, and try to find out who can be a prospective student. This can be done on to the technology front, whether it is chatbot or filtering or emailers or anything. Now the second part is counseling side of a student, a prospective student. Somehow till date, I could not find out a right kind of a platform who deals into the counseling side of education marketing. Most of the portals, most of the available platforms are trying on the first part of it. So that is an area where we need to do some kind of innovation and research, which inculcates the counseling side of a student, where they ask, okay, if you're looking for engineering, what are the basic reasons you're looking for engineering? Are there some other options which you can take up instead of engineering or parallelly with engineering? Technology side and digital marketing has to focus on that side of the overall game also.
Okay, I have that takeaway, and we'll come back to the part wherein the use of technology with respect that you were talking about. We'll move on to Mr. Jayanta Bakshi here. Sir, can I have a perspective on how data is being used to build the outreach programs? And let's expand it a little bit, and with respect to uh, allocation of funds or allocation the resources for the outreach programs as well.
Good. I mean, I will first of all take the cue from what Meghdut said. Say, when we talk about digital marketing, we talk about technology. But we must not forget one thing, that when you talk about marketing, definitely it is creativity, number one. And it's obviously the customers, your students, play the most and the most dominant role when you decide and plan about your marketing campaigns. So, creativity and understanding your customer is most important. Now, when we see that digital marketing and the marketing automation, these two things, I mean, have brought, they have brought a marketing, and they've made the marketing very process oriented and data driven. We are getting, I mean, we could not ever think of getting so many data. I mean, if you talk about the sales and the admission leads, I mean, we are flooded with leads. But yes, the most important challenge before us is that what should we or how we use the leads. That's the most important challenge. It's not just reaching out to people, and I mean, generating and getting a lot of data, but how we use the data and how we use the leads. Now, it's what I have felt and what we have exercised at NSHM and what we are exploring and what we are trying to build up. That and what is most important in the entire marketing process, that we should build up multiple touch points around the entire ecosystem and offer valuable and meaningful engagement for the students. I mean, we always think of selling and selling. but what are we doing to engage the students? And these touch points, if we really concentrate upon, we can make all these touch points as our trust points. And that is the driving factor, the most important driving factor in education marketing. Build up trust and build up those points, which we finally call the trusting factors, not the, touch points, the trust points. And higher the trust points, higher the trust points or the higher the trust index and higher the conversion. So it is what I feel that we should understand the students, because their needs, their wants, and accordingly customize campaigns which would engage them and offer them an experiential platform, to know more about their queries. And that is where we should focus upon. And again, I harp upon that point, build up those trust points.
Thanks, Mr. Bagchi. Mrs. Nanshu Verma, what's your thought? What's your take on the aspect of building an outreach program and allocation of resources based on the main real-time data?
So I think when you talk of outreach, now there could be a kind of confusion that we are reaching out all across, through the digital marketing side of it. The other part of outreach is where you go in a focused way, to a targeted market, right, and to a targeted segment of students within the market. And I think data that way is an excellent guide. See, numbers have this beautiful way of talking to you if you allow them to talk to you.
Yeah.
Right. So data has a beautiful way of telling you as to where you need to go, or where you went and it didn't work for you, where you went, it worked for you. And it's all about looking deeper from just the level of saying, okay, last year I got X number of leads, I spent so much of money, and therefore finally my cost of admission or my cost of conversion was so and so. So based on that broad data, what I will do next year, I don't think that works. I think what goes deeper is that the data which you got, what you did on the data, and this is similar to what Manjinder was saying, that can we use technology which will also play a role in counseling, and not just telling me that Mr. ABC has applied for as a lead from Chennai, right? Is there a way where I can use technology to go deeper and to find out why that person from Chennai actually applied to, let's say, a Bennett, which is up north? So when you look at it and then you say, okay, so this is what worked, this is what did not work, and every year being a different year, you need to be clear what did not work consistently for 2 years. I think it's a waste of time and effort to really run after it again, saying I will do it better this year. So there will be strengths and there will be weaknesses. The strengths need to be capitalized by digging deep to say why I succeeded. And the most difficult question I have seen in my life, which is very difficult to answer by a lot of people, is why did I do well? You will get 100 slides in a presentation if you don't meet your target. But once you met your target, you don't get more than 2 slides. So it is equally important for us to understand what worked. And definitely what works for you is what needs to be backed up.
Yeah.
But backing up also does not mean that you open your floodgates and go running after it, right? Because there will, in a lot of activities which you've done to reach out, whether it's to students, to parents, there will be a lots of activities and things which you actually may not have done because you've been working in a certain staid, standard way. And for that, I would say it is equally an important responsibility on our parts to build that knowledge within the teams. To build the knowledge so that they are in line and contemporary with what is happening in the world today in terms of connecting, creating trust, building the confidence in the target audience. And the key to that is to understand from our existing student base what made them come to us. And are we able to satisfy it? It's a very dangerous thing to do because, you know, if you have unsatisfied students, you'll get a lot of flack. But I think that is something which we need to actually do, because if we don't do it, then the kind of future we can have as institutions, we will never be able to actually get. So that is my view. So I would do my funding based on not just numbers and productivity, but also look at the reason as to why those numbers came. And the answers will lie within our existing student base, because they've already experienced you, and there's a huge factor of what they go back outside of the university and do, which impacts the places they come from.
Thanks. Mr. Meghdut, my question to you with regards to this is that even in this age of tracking cookies and measuring the click-throughs and having a lot of content or data-driven decisions, somewhere down the line, are we still able in the education sector specifically? Are we still able to have that optimized spending allocation in our outreach programs? What's your take on this?
I don't think I understood your question. Could you break it down?
Are we actually able to allocate the resources in the most optimized way, even in the education sector specifically? Are we still able to do that? Do you think so? What's your take on that?
I mean, I think it's very specific on the example that you take, right? Depending on the kind of institution you are, depending on the kind of topography you're in, depending on the kind of demographics you are targeting, your spends are going to be as good as you understand your audience at the end of the day. I think it's again very much a direct result of the marketing team, whoever's heading the marketing team, their vision of what they want to achieve. But rather than that, let me try and bring a little bit of insight on what can be done with innovation in the field of marketing. See, I'm not a hardcore marketing person. So I was actually sitting here and thinking, what am I doing here at this panel? Because everyone I see around me are people who directly have goals, and they need to create their teams and all of that. And I was thinking, I'm the one who creates the goals. What am I doing here? Because it doesn't make any sense for me to be on a marketing summit. And then I realized something. The point is that most probably people say, even if we take the example of, say, College Dunia or whoever's organized the summit today, people's images of certain universities or organizations work on perception. Now, the perception here, if you're talking about education in the East, is that probably if we reach out to Meghdut, he might be able to give us some input on it, because you probably have seen my posts on LinkedIn or on Facebook or somewhere. And that's most probably because I'm creating a lot of original content as I go through with my students, creating innovative campaigns and things that we do, which does not necessarily mean that I'm doing it with the idea of ROI. But a lot of the times I'm doing it with creating or reformulating or reiterating on the Techno India brand image. See, for Techno India to get students, I don't need to do a single bit of marketing. And I'm not saying that from a position of like showing off. I'm not bragging to any of you. We've been around for 35 years, where every year, we have to increase the number of floors in our buildings by 2 so that we can accommodate all the new students coming in. Currently, we have 100,000 students across the country. Here, I don't sit talking about Techno India University in general. We have 22 colleges, 4 universities, we have 30 schools, and we are running different kinds of marketing campaigns for all of them. Now, as part of the Techno India family, as part of the next generation of Techno India, I am not thinking here, okay, tomorrow if I put in an ad in one newspaper or I do a TV ad or whatever, I'm going to get these many new students. I don't care. Honestly, it does not matter to me. So for me, the point is very simple. I need to be relevant no matter what the time and age is, irrespective of if there's a pandemic outside that is bogging us down. I need to be the most relevant player in the market, irrespective of what is happening, right? So from that perspective, that's where I come in as the innovation expert for the group, as the person who understands the global scenarios. And for this one, I want to cite a very specific example, which is not from the world of education. Who's the richest person in the world right now? Elon Musk. What does Elon Musk do? Who is Elon Musk? Elon Musk is an out and out influencer who also happens to sell cars sometimes, who also happens to sell experiences of you might be able to go to moon tomorrow, go to Mars tomorrow, whatever his idea is. Elon Musk sells dreams. Capital becomes easy when you know how to sell stories, when you know how to sell dreams. And the way that I look at my position in the group, that's what I'm kind of trying to do without even trying to do it. It's just something that generally ends up happening because influencers are the new editors in chief. Something very interesting happened the other day. Somebody representing a big newspaper, a big daily came to me and said that, if you pay us this kind of money, I think they came to meet our CMO. They said, if you pay us this kind of money, then this is the kind of campaign that we can do. I called them and I said, how many people can you reach out to? They said, okay, X number of people. I said, just by the number of alumni in my group, I can reach out to 100X of that. Why would I be paying you money? You should be paying me money to actually feature me on your page. And then another thing that ends up happening is even the biggest publication house, even the biggest media houses today are not digital natives. They are still thinking of, the first point that I had raised was the linear expansion of, so this happens in the physical space. Let's add a camera and 2 speaker microphones on it. Maybe we can amplify it into the digital space. I'm sorry, it does not work that way because you are trying to target individuals, young individuals, millennials. These are your target audience. They don't care about your age-old dated methods of marketing anymore. For them, and again, another example, which is not from the world of marketing, there's a company in the US called Ocean Spray. I don't know if you've heard of Ocean Spray. They make energy drinks. They've been around for 20 years. In the entire 20 years, the amount of attention that they've gotten and the amount of versus the amount of media spends that they've done, all of that was broken in 1 minute. From 20 years versus 1 minute, when this influencer called Dogface208, he did a video, he did a reel, a 15-second reel of him on a longboard drinking Ocean Spray and going through the streets of Los Angeles. 1 minute versus 20 years. Let's talk exponential marketing. Let's not talk incremental marketing anymore because it's not working. We're seeing that one reel of 15 seconds can gain enough traction for the entire company. And now they just went right on top of the charts without really worrying about, okay, how much money, even if they paid $1 million to this influencer to do that one video and it clicked, it means a lot more. And while I was sitting here, I came out with a term for it. I think I want to call it breaking the beehive. Because until you're breaking the beehive, you won't have your bees swarming at you. And you need the bees to swarm at you. You need to do something that has that kind of impact. So what I say is, and maybe my personal opinions might not be relevant in this case to a lot of other people. They might have different goals and ambitions. The way that I look at marketing is very different. The way I look at marketing is I am talking to every single one of my potential audiences one-on-one. That conversation is a singular conversation that I as a brand am having with my target audience, and they feel that I'm having that conversation only with them. If I'm able to do that, tomorrow there will be no dearth of potential seats that we need to fill up in our institutions. We already don't, and hopefully tomorrow as well we won't, if we are able to keep relevant with the times and the way that they're changing.
Mr. Pickle, I'll ask you a very relevant point, but regarding having a conversation one-on-one with your prospects, do you feel the need of segmentation of your audience? And do you see that?
I mean, that's the first level, segmentation, figuring out your demographics, figuring out what they do on their in their free time, what they eat, what they drink. That's the layer one. I'm saying we need to go a lot below. We need to go we need to have that kind of a mental rapport with our audiences, wherein even if you're running that campaign for 1 million people, it needs to feel personalized. See, the age of mass production in general or mass appeal is over. People want to feel special. People have always wanted to feel special, now more than ever, because more the amount of data, is equal to more the amount of noise. It does not actually equal to more the amount of conversions on based on the data, because you have that many more opportunities to choose from as well. Tomorrow, if Mr. Bagchi is doing his ads for NSHM, then there's also somebody from Heritage, there's another one from IEM, there's another one from Techno India, and they're all present on the same media. They're all doing, they all have their own PR agencies, marketing agencies. They're all trying to sell to that many number of students. That the goal is still the same. So unless and until each of these brands are having conversations with the students themselves, one-on-one. Let me also give another example. Let's say one of the most successful influencers in West Bengal right now, again, we were talking about regional, so let's keep it regional. There's this guy called Bongai. He's got some, 3-4 million people on his social media, at least on every platform. So everything put together, maybe 10 million. It's a crore people that he targets to. He's one of our ex-students. Now for us, it makes a lot more sense if, for example, his ideals match my brand ideals. It is a lot easier for me to pay this guy. Last year we had spent, let's say, 2 crore rupees on ads. This year, let's spend 10 lakh rupees on this guy, make him do a post for me. He is a brand ambassador. He carries the same ideals. He's already a student, so he speaks from his heart and it's relevant. And it's a lot cheaper for me to run another ad for maybe for branding that's great, maybe on ABP or on Telegraph or Statesman or any of the big newspapers, or put up 10 other hoardings, but it's not personalized. If Bonga is speaking to his potential crore people, and out of that, even if 10 people come in and join the college because that's a potential senior who's talking to them, having a conversation one-on-one, that makes a lot more sense. And it my ROI times 10x. I don't need to worry about that anymore. So that's what I'm saying. Again, these are things I'm just building on top of the conversation right now. I wasn't really, I wasn't thinking about it that way. But when you say it, it makes sense. That one-on-one conversation, I'm actually quite convinced that's the only way to go. Tomorrow, the brands which fail to have singular bilateral conversations with their target audiences are going to go bust. They're going to become dinosaurs. And God save them all. That's all I can say.
Great. Mr. Suraj, can we have your perspective on how segmentation becomes important, and what are the different segmentation from your personal anecdotes at MIT ADT, that how segmentation is done, let's say in MIT ADT, and it helps you with respect to outreach programs and marketing?
Yeah, thank you, Taranjot. I would like to definitely vouch for whatever things has been put forward by Meghdut as well as Sudhanshu ji, and initially Majinder ji. So basically, just to add the context, we know that this year COVID-19 has created a lot of challenges and uncertainties for us. So let me share our experience also with you. So typically we used to ramp up our high contact admission activities from March to June. And last year we have faced unprecedented around engagement model and enrollment figures. And even right now, enrollment has become even more critical this academic year, when both the financial resilience as well as cultural fabric of institutions are being tested, I must say. So if you could correlate this, perhaps this crisis associated with the virus, it has provided us an opportunity to examine admission policies as well as practices, where we could also recenter and align our experience for strategy formulation. So if you could consider, and if you would like to talk about segmentation as far as outreach activities, so this pandemic forced us to creatively consider how to turn outreach activities like in-person events into the virtual programs, where we could apply multiple channel approach as well, since most of the prospect could not visit the campus. So every year during admission season or admission campaign, most of the prospect visit the campus. They visit a lot of what we can say, as Meghdut also mentioned, it's all about the personal connect, right? If someone is going to pursue his or her graduation or post-graduation, he or shall know what kind of facilities, what kind of exposure the university is going to give. So they could not visit this time. So webinars, virtual expos, live events, and everyone has used Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, even Instagram kind of virtual apps options, which may have had an equalizing effect. And basically at MIT ADT University, we basically give emphasis on 3C approach, I must say: content, communication, and coordination. Because as Meghdut was also mentioning about the content, about the Bonga and other, how much content you can deliver to your prospect to engage them. Even Jayanta ji has also stressed upon the engagement. So engagement is very much required. If you have the content which is more precise, engaging, interactive, and customized as per the individual's requirement. Because right now, this generation, this what we can say, baby boomers, they do have a lot of aspirations as far as their career is concerned, right? And if we could provide customized content as well as customize what we can say career path for them, it would be really helpful for them. Then if talk about communication, so we shall have direct and well composed intensive communication strategy, how we are going to engage our prospects, how they can be taken. And as far as segmentation is concerned, just to give you an example, this year we have also done several experimentation regarding social media and other tactics, where we have played with the regional languages or vernacular languages, where we have had several videos and creatives in the Hindi, Bengali, Assamese, all the major languages across India. So which connects, because the audience, even the diversity, if you talk, they come from the different background, right from east to right to west, as well as north to south. And last thing is coordination, which I would like to say here as far as 3C approach is concerned. So we have to monitor vigorously, because when we talk about one-to-one coordination, right? So the drive to understand prospect has to be there, and we shall have real-time analytics, and that's how we can use social media and other digital.
I'll take that cue regarding the content. Very interesting point regarding the vernacular content piece, and I'll throw a question at Mr. Sudhanshu Verma because of his specific from the background that he's coming from. Sir, of the background that you have, the segmentation. I'm sure that you must have had like 25, 30 different kind of segments of customers or consumers going. It's somewhat similar from the industry that I'm also coming from. Do you see that segmentation actually missing in this sector altogether? That segmentation of the consumers, or in this case, the students or the parents for that matter, is being missed currently in education sector.
Taranjot, so one point which I want to say is on this whole thing about vernacular.
Yeah.
Unless you are an institution or a university or a college which is going to teach in multilingual way, and you're going to have courses run in vernaculars, I personally don't see any value in vernacular advertising, because end of the day, when the kid comes to the institution, all of you are going to teach him in English.
Yeah.
And if you're teaching him in English, then your communication, if it is not understood in English, then what is the point in getting that student and pushing him into a language which is not comfortable with? That is number one. Number two, when it comes to segmentation, I think over the years and the decades and centuries that education has been around, the segmentation of your audience has already happened. Now, you only underline that segmentation because of the price points which you choose for your institution or university, and the type and depth of programs that you offer. Okay, so in this case, if you are at, let's say, a price band of 1 lakh, 1.5 lakh, or you are at a price band of 2 to 2.5 lakhs, then you're at a price band of 3 to 4 lakhs, you've already naturally segmented your audience, and you naturally segmented the people who are coming in. How will you interact with that segment that is coming to you? Because their first thought as a parent is on the ROI. Their first thought is, if my kid is going into an XYZ university or college, what is going to happen to him, the 3-year or a 4-year or 5-year program, whichever he is doing, what is going to happen after that, right? And if that is something on which you built a track record and you can prove it and you can demonstrate it, then this whole segmentation, which typically today is based on the price point, it gets self-justified. But if you're not able to, show the output, then your whole system about education becomes a cost. If you're able to justify and showcase what your output has been, this word cost goes out and investment comes in.
Yeah.
So segmentation according to me, is a natural phenomenon which has happened in education over a period of time. And Techno has a good spread across the country. And across the country, they would have found that at various places, there is this whole, English word called affordability. The fact is, affordability to me is just a notion.
Mm-hmm.
Affordability comes into question when it is a cost versus investment debate. So if you prove that you're a place or an institute or a university to be invested in, affordability does not come into play. But if you prove that you are a place where it is a cost, affordability definitely comes into play. So segmentation is natural, price point driven, and what is it that you have to offer, which further breaks down the segments into mini segments. That's what I have.
What do you agree? Yay or nay for vernacular content from your perspective?
100% yay. And for various reasons. I mean, it's not just with the singular focus of getting more admissions. I think in general, vernacular content is the future, and not just for for advertising purposes. Even if you look at, let's say the idea of a country like China. Okay, and I'm sorry to bring that up. I know there's certain reservations around that C word in general in recent times. But I take the example of China for a very specific reason. Kids in China learn how to code, for example, in Chinese. They learn how to code in Mandarin. And you see the growth factor or the or the learning curve for these kids is a lot lower because they figure out how to code earlier. It's something that they've already grown up with as a language. And I think in general, that makes a lot more high growth companies from there possible. Hence more entrepreneurs, more engineers making big in the market. Now imagine if a kid growing up in Purulia, in Uttar Dinajpur could speak, who speaks in Bangla or their particular dialects, if they could learn how to code in Bangla, and they also had in the back end, instructional material or content in Bangla which was available to them, it would make their own journeys a lot simpler. The same way in various parts of country, because see, India at the end of the day, of course, it's regional. Of course, marketing needs to be regional because you're talking about a country that large. Right? You're talking about that many countries within one country. And the only comparable example I could have was with China. That is the whole point. That if our kids, say for example, if there was one language which all of India would unilaterally speak without any reservation, say for example, if it was not Hindi, say it was Sanskrit. And across the country, if everyone was learning coding in Sanskrit, all of the schools were in Sanskrit, and we were not living in the post-colonial hangover, again, not going into the debate of whether English is good or bad. I mean, we are on our global platforms wherever we are because of our ease with the English language. But in general, if there was a way of doing it in the vernacular which you grew up with, it would have made things a lot simpler. And in that regard as well, another much smaller country, that example that you can take, for example, a country like Lebanon, where every kid who's growing up has to learn 3 languages. They're learning Arabic, French and English, and French because it was a French mandate at some point, and Arabic because it's a Middle Eastern country. And they get a global perspective of that, but most of their schooling that happens in either French and Arabic. And when they're learning as well, it's more, and most of the content that they're fed, most of the advertisements are in French or Arabic. Yes, they do speak English as well as we do, sometimes maybe even better. Whole point being, it's all about relatability. If tomorrow our kids are getting content in a language that they're more at ease speaking or communicating with, and they're also getting fed information in these languages, it's better for the education system as a whole in general. So actually, I actually, every time somebody comes up and says, oh, this kid is slightly less good than this other one because his English speaking skills are not that great. I'm like, pehle dekho, critical thinking skills hai ki nahi, wo hone se to whatever it is, whatever comes tomorrow, he'll go past it. But if he can't think, but wo fat ke English bol leta hai, for me, that's not really a marker of success or potential success or of how smart he is, because at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. Again, personal opinions.
Interesting. Dr. Dhaliwal, what's your perspective, sir? Vernacular content and campaigns Are you? It's a yay or nay for you specifically. Sir, please unmute the mic, sir.
So I would come back to the question of segmentation. Now, segmentation, as said earlier, that it is done on price point also. But for us at Chitkara University, segmentation is primarily done at eligibility criteria level. So when we look at, say, any government institution is looking for with the eligibility criteria of, say, 50% in 10+2, we are talking of 60% into 10+2. So there, the question of vernacular and English comes for us. Secondly, vernacular and English thing we decide on to the demography based, sites. For example, if I am advertising more into deeper Himachal Pradesh, so we would rather go with vernacular part. Rather, when we are into Chandigarh, we would go with English side of it. Secondly, as our, we look at in Chitkara University, segmentation is done with the eligibility criteria. So our communication content also revolves around that. For example, when we are looking way more higher percentage into 10+2, so we would definitely not advertise placement as the trust building point. Wherein I have observed all the institutions who have lower eligibility criteria, they would push through the placement as a trust building point. So, the question basically while deciding all media strategy lies into why do people come to us and how to remain relevant in my core market. Now, to remain relevant into my core market, I have to build a trust point. And in education, the larger trust point, especially into a private education system, is the larger trust point is what kind of careers my student get after going through the education at my campus. So segmentation is a basic question of eligibility criteria with us. Secondly, as I said in the opening remark, this is an ecosystem. Education marketing is an ecosystem with a limiting factor that the total number of clients are fixed every year. Now, when I have chosen a higher eligibility criteria, my segment of that total number of students available to me again gets restricted. And it becomes more competitive with the government institutions. So depending upon these factors, we would decide onto the vernacular or the platform side or the fee side. Secondly, another thing we talked in this discussion is that what kind of resource allocation we do and how do we decide onto the resource allocation. Now, when from platform side we talk resource, that is the how much investment we do onto a particular newspaper or a particular website. But when I look at as a marketeer, I look at what kind of data I am handling. That is the first resource because there's a limited. I can't let it go. If there's a student with 70% marks and he's a prospective student for a private institution in Chandigarh, I can't let that student go out of my ecosystem. So I have to engage him multiple times, no matter whether he is coming from a newspaper or a digital portal or a Google advertising, whatever. Second biggest resource in my case is my counseling team. What kind of counseling team I put in and how long I can retain in them my system. So these are the broader areas we look at while doing our marketing, while segmenting our marketing, while deciding on to the resource allocation and while deciding upon to the vernacular or English side or print media or the ATL activities or the BTL activities at Chitkara University.
Okay. We'll move on to the last aspect of it, wherein let's discuss regarding the distance is kind of considered to be one of the major factors for choosing a higher education institute. And I'll start this question with Mr. Bakchi here. That how the regional marketing or how the content marketing at a regional level basically kind of helps in overcoming this distance as a factor for students and parents, specifically during the times when the last year when the localization has happened at a very aggressive rate because of COVID. How will regional marketing be a very pivotal factor to overcome that variable of distance for the parents and the students?
Well, I mean, I would like to start with the point that when we talk about education marketing, it is not only just filling up the seats, because we have other greater objectives in front of us. The most important aspiration for any education institute is that they want to like to build up a geographical mix in their classroom, number one. Number two, I mean, we always have an aspiration that we want more students to apply for my college. So I get the opportunity to select the best talent. And that is the aspiration for any institute. So we should never think of whenever we are trying to do any kind of marketing activity, we're just trying to fill up the seats. I mean, if I talk specifically in terms of education marketing. Now, when you talk about extending your reach, so obviously, I mean, the point comes that you should move beyond the boundary. I mean, it's not that, I mean, say, for example, NSHM Knowledge Campus, I mean, we have two campuses, one in Kolkata, another in Durgapur, that we would be wanting students only from Kolkata, Bihar, Jharkhand, and Orissa. Why not South? And yes, we have seen people from South, people from West. I mean, we were thinking that why would a student from Bombay would like to apply for a college in Kolkata? But yes, we have seen that there are instances, and that number of instances is definitely going up. So now we should definitely, I mean, set, because you see, we would always, I mean, want to set, I mean, higher benchmark, and we would always want to go beyond boundary. And yes, with the new technology and the new way of communication, we can do it. Now, for which it is very, very important that you also have to identify the product or the courses which you're selling. Say, for example, if I talk about a BBA, if it's a vanilla BBA, I mean, it's a very localized course, so we cannot expect. I mean, a student would come all the way from Mumbai to study BBA. I mean, at NSHM in Kolkata. So there we have to, I mean, build up the new courses which we feel. Say, for example, I mean, in our course bouquet, if we see, I mean, we are very proud of our design courses, or we are very proud about our media courses, hotel management courses, which are very niche courses. Build up those courses and definitely take them beyond the boundary, and try to get better talents from other location, and that should also be, I mean, why within India, but it can also be outside India. We can also think of international destination. The only objective that yes, we should have a geographical mix in our class, and definitely we attract more talents and we expand our reach. And that is the main objective of taking your brand beyond boundaries.
Great, thanks, Mr. Bagchi. Mr. Meghal, what's your perspective with distance being one of the major reasons for deciding factor for NHEI, and specifically during this COVID times and post-COVID times, when we are getting into a new normal, how these regional campaigns will actually help overcome that variable of distance? And we would love to hear the perspective of Techno here specifically. Uh, yeah, so.
So for, I think various programs, we have various different ideas of it. Let's break down this problem into two bits. One is if I am not providing the kind of education that I can and help with the socio-economic development of certain sectors of society, which is why I think we got in, at least my father got into education in the first place, and help pave the way for so many other institutions in the state as well. Then we're not doing justice to our job as educators and as academicians. So for me, I think there's a certain benefit in being regional as well. We don't see it as, okay, just because there's scope of expansion doesn't mean you have to expand. So we are very comfortable in that way. We have about 60% of our students who come from within the state, and about 35-40% coming from outside, and we want to keep it that. We want to, for especially for our engineering programs, for example, we believe that the fact that yes, we are a mass education group. We provide, even under the engineering banner, we have about 60,000, 50 to 60,000 students who go through engineering bachelors at various Techno India Group institutions every year. We want to keep it that way, that 65% of those, we want them to be local students. So we keep our marketing the same way. It's also very age old in a lot of ways, very admission, like government admission notice type admission, type notices on newspapers with really what most people would say, most modern day marketers would say, tacky font and bad background colors. But that's what works, because at the end of the day, you need to understand your target audience, and that's our target audience. A huge chunk of our target audience is people coming from smaller parts of Bengal, where modern day media has not penetrated the way you would like. So a lot of focus on vernacular dailies and all of that. Now that's for, say, engineering sector, but we also have, say, for example, a very modern school of design that we opened this year, and even within it's a joint venture with a French school called École Intuit Lab, and we opened the school within the pandemic, and our class is full even this year. And we had a very different marketing strategy for that. Actually, about 40% of the class for that program, even in the pandemic, I mean, yes, they are going to come to class soon. It's all online. But even for that, we have students who've come in from various different, we have students from Bombay, from Pune, from Bangalore, and they want to come and study in Bengal, because the kind of programs we're offering, say a program in a Bachelor of Design with a Bachelor of Game Design with Ubisoft is something that very few institutions would offer. So that's got a very specific approach to marketing. It's very new age. It's a lot of again, a lot of influencer marketing, a lot of marketing with with new media, as we call it, and also with very interesting faculty from across the world. We've got faculty from Brazil, we've got faculty from Australia, a lot of faculty from Europe, most of the faculty from Europe, in fact. And that has a very different way of selling as well, because also the pricing is completely different. We are talking about programs which are like 12 to 15 lakh rupees for their entire duration in the East, which most people would say that's unthinkable. But we have a completely full class, and hopefully for the next sessions as well, we would continue having that. So at the end of the day, again, I think it all comes down to what your objective is. This is a class of 60 that I need to have with 4 design programs, but I have to do classes of 60,000 for my engineering and my management program. So how well you understand either of those markets, and as long as that's ticking all the right boxes, I think we're good to go.
Great. We'll have the last perspective from Mr. Sudhanshu Verma as well on how regional marketing actually basically overcomes that variable of distance. And along with the perspective, we'll have your closing remarks as well, sir.
Taranjot, to me, you see, distance comes into a question or consideration if you as an institution are not providing the magnet. So like what, Jayant was saying, what Meghdut also said, if you got the right program and there is strength and depth of that program, distance is immaterial. I remember my time when I went to BITS Pilani, 60% of the population in a small village converted to a small town called Pilani used to be coming from primarily Chennai, the rest of Tamil Nadu and Andhra and Telangana. Now, where is the distance? And I'm talking of way back in 1983. Even today, if you look at it, and the mix, like in Bennett, the mix that we have is about 48% of our population is from outside of what we call as home state. Well, frankly speaking, Greater Noida is not a state. I don't even have a home state, if you look at it, right? But if I take UP into consideration, if I take Delhi NCR into consideration, and that becomes my home state, 48% is still outside of it. If you look at distances, which people have to travel, and therefore about 90 to 95% of our population is hostel based within the campus. Now, if I was not to have a hostel, I think, and only limited hostel, then all the outsiders are the only ones who would have come in. So the distance will come into play if you as an institution or a university are not able to provide that magnet where a person looks at it and says, this is the place where I have to go and do this program. And if you've proven yourself in that type of a program, then immaterial. Because at the end of the day, let's also understand this. Once a child passes out, whether it is a undergrad program or a postgrad program, today is not the world where you decide to work in the place you live. Today you live in the place you work. So distance in any case in time to come will not matter. And in my past, whatever, 30, 31 years of working, I don't think distance ever comes into consideration if you got the right mix and the right thing to offer. If you don't have that, then of course, distance is the first thing which will come to mind when people say, oh, it's too far away and I won't come.
Yeah.
On the closing, all that I would say is, I think there is no option but to break your boundaries of, the state, the home state, etc. And a point on what, Manjinder has been saying, that we've got a limited number of students to reach out to take admission. My information, if it's not too wrong, I think we have about 1 crore plus every year who pass out of 12th. And therefore, if each one of us put our total numbers together, we would be a couple of decimal points of what is the number we need. And there is practically no better way to break the regional barriers and, the distances other than reaching out through technology. Having said that, I also say what you do with technology, because technology has a very unique capability. It can either, if you use it innovatively, you can do wonderful things. But if you continue using it the way you've been doing work without using technology, it also has the capability of making you do or repeat your mistakes exceedingly well. So it's for us to decide we want to repeat our mistakes exceedingly well using technology, or we want to learn from our mistakes and use technology in a different way. So there is, to me, no option but to use technology innovatively and move in the right direction and create the magnets that are needed to be created. That's it from my side.
Great. Thanks a lot, Mr. Sudhanshu Verma. Dr. Dhaliwal, can we have your closing remarks, sir?
For me, when I look at marketing education, for me, it remains a question of segmenting onto eligibility criteria and then attracting right kind of a talent. So when I do my segmentation on eligibility criteria and right kind of talent, distance does not matter. The only thing matters is that what kind of students I am getting. For example, from Northeast, all the state boards in Northeast would not match up with 60% of the criteria into the 10+2. Whosoever will get more than 60%, 99%, they will get admission into their local government institutions. So when I look at marketing, I look at creating an ecosystem where all the students, they are choosing me for their better careers, not just to fill my seats. I mean, eventually they get filled every year, and over the years we get rejection ratio of sometimes 1 to 10 or 1 to 12 also in certain courses. So for me, it remains a criteria of creating a right kind of segment and then creating a right kind of funnel. Once we have created a funnel, then we let it to the student whether they choose us or not, because ultimately seats will be filled with the right kind of talent. So distance and all other factors don't matter much. As far as technology is concerned, there is no way we can escape it. We have to use it practically, and we have to be conscious that whether we are reaching out to the right kind of data or not. That's my closing comment.
Thanks a lot, Dr. Dhaliwal. Mr. Suraj Bhoya, can we have your closing remarks, sir, quickly?
Yeah, thank you. All of them I already proposed, but let me tell you, basically, I love to mention over here, we would like to have MBA approach, MB and A. So marketing, where we could reinforce the presence in existing market, where we can develop an aggressive communication strategy for intense engagement. B for branding, where we could establish our brand for immediate recall and value proposition among the prospects, where we could also develop the brand components for better outreach. And A is for admissions. So from marketing, branding to admissions, where for admission also, we could have end-to-end paperless with customized workflows, where we could have proper induction and orientation of prospect as the segmentation and other stuff mentioned by Maninder ji, and make those also. So
Great, thanks. Mr. Bakshi, can we have your closing remarks, sir? So you need to you need to unmute yourself, sir.
Say my closing comments, you see, at the end of the day, I mean, now we can never think of moving behind with technology. I mean, technology has opened up n number of options. But yes, along with technology, what we always have to understand that how we communicate and, I mean, maintain that connect, which is very, very important with the students. And when we talk about marketing, it's not selling your product. It's how you build up relationship with the student fraternity. That is the most and the most important aspect, and we should concentrate and focus on that, and others will fall into places quite naturally, and that is my take on that.
Thanks a lot, Mr. Bakshi. Lastly, Mr. Meghdut, can we have your closing remarks, please?
Two closing remarks, I guess, from my side. One, I love the point about trust points, not touch points and trust points, because at the end of the day, we're not dealing with bits and bytes. This is just the means to an end. We're dealing with humans, we're dealing with human aspirations. Somebody coming into your institutions is coming here to get better at life, is coming here to create a life for themselves, for their families, and we need to respect that. I think it's very important. And again, related point on that, let's not forget that the human interaction is what is going to stay. Let's use technology to the best of our abilities, and let's understand how new technology and how media works in general. But at the end of the day, if we don't understand the people, then understanding all of the technology is not going to be very relevant at the end of the day. So thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
Great, thanks, Crisp, and to complete to the point. I think that's all from my side, and over to you now, Chandan.
So let me thank Taranjit to you. So you did a lovely moderation, and putting the right questions to the right person of the kind of strata and the expertise every individual is carrying, with the kind of rich experience every person is having in this esteemed panel. You tried your best to get out the best words and best examples from them. In fact, a very powerful talk session we had today. Great learning, lovely deliberation, lots of discussion over data, personal experience, good examples. So like overall, like we are in the era of disruption. So let's embrace technology is what we have learned. Let's be innovative, keep skilling and reskilling. So thank you so much, all the panelists for joining us over here. To thank Mr. Sudhanshu Verma, CEO, Bennett University. Sir, we see you and are you in so many panel discussion. Let it be the marketeer session, let it be any other session which is including of say Vice Chancellor, or you try to adjust in most of the session what I've experienced and learned from you, sir. So great learning, Sudhanshu sir. Always great to have you on board. Meghdut Roy, you are representing one of the finest institutions of India. Let me congratulate in the kind of work which you are doing. With every word and every speech, I can understand the kind of, and it's not happening because of your individual approach. I'm sure the same energetic and a very vibrant team you must be having, to handle this entire group of institutions from say higher education to school education. So my best wishes to your journey ahead, Meghdut. And to Mr. Suraj Boyar, sir, you are representing one of the best schools of say Western India, MIT group of institution. Again, it is from KG to PG, and in very simple languages, giving your short example of approach. Let it be 3C approach, let it be MBA approach. I have been listening to it, and I could very much relate to the simple examples which you are putting over here, which you put over here. Mr. Majinder Singh Dhariwalji, it is always a pleasure to have Chitkara University on board. Let it be Chitkara ma'am herself, or you, or the Vice Chancellor of the university. You are doing some great work, and you have definitely, brought your brand in one of the top institutions of India. So let me congratulate to your journey ahead. And again, congratulations to the entire team which you have with you. Mr. Jayanta Bagchi, sir, Associate Vice President, Branding Communication, NSHM Knowledge Campus. So it is, you carry a very rich legacy and a very good experience among all the panelists where we had today, and very good examples and very good deliberation you contributed in this event. Taranjit, thanks for moderating this session.